28th meeting of the Senate Finance Committee will come to order. And we are going to plan to meet until about 10 a.m. this morning and then recess, return after session if needed to complete the agenda. And today we will have one bill on the agenda, and it's an emotional subject to people, and everybody has strong feelings on this. I want to thank everyone who joined us for the hearings. Just real quick reminder of security and decorum procedures and guidelines. We do not accept signs or placards in the hearing room, and no verbal outbursts, disruptive behavior, or applause is allowed. For safety reasons, people have to remain seated. If you require reasonable accommodation, please talk to the sergeants who are in the room to ensure everyone's safety. And with that, we are going to have one bill on the agenda, Senator Mohamed, and Senate File 3655. And perhaps we could have Ms. Stengel walk us through the planned actions for the bill today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. It's my understanding the intended plan for today is to take up Senator Mohamed's Senate File 3655. Senator Mohamed will present her bill as the A19 Delete Everything Amendment. Following the presentation, there will be consideration of the A19 amendment and consideration of any other amendments and discussion and debate of the bill. As is the practice of the Finance Committee, there will not be any public testimony in today's hearing. At the end of debate and discussion, Senate File 3655 will be laid over as amended. Tomorrow, Senate File 4067 will be taken up as the vehicle for this topic. At that time, an amendment will be offered that includes all of the work of the committee done today. At that time, tomorrow, a final vote on the bill will be taken with the intended motion to send the bill to the floor.
Thank you. And for members' sake, Ms. Stengel keeps updating the memo in the packet on the summary of the Senate Finance Committee actions for the budget bills. And as indicated, this bill will be traveling on its own after tomorrow, and it's added to the other bill as deleted. So the language you have here, Senator Mohamed, is the language you intend to send to the floor if the committee approves that. Thank you. With that, welcome to the committee, and please go ahead and present.
Thank you, members, and good morning. On the morning of August 27th, 2025, a shooter opened fire on the Annunciation Church in South Minneapolis, killing Harbor Moisky and Fletcher Merkel and wounding 27 others, 3 church parishioners in their 80s and 24 children. Within days, Chair Latz and I were forming a legislative work group on gun violence prevention and welcoming all 67 senators to bring forth proposals to help prevent the next mass shooting in Minnesota. Today is the culmination of that work, of many months of meetings and hours of committee hearings for dozens of legislators and hundreds of advocates, experts, and staff. In fact, some of these proposals have been in the work for years. As we have said from the start of this process, this is a complex problem without a single solution. The students and parents we have heard from do not want us to choose between banning weapons of war and investing in school safety. This isn't either or. We need both. We need funding for mental health and the ability to identify threats to the community. We need to gather data long-term, and we need to act on information immediately. We need to build on past decisions that are working and welcome new ideas. When it comes to keeping kids safe, the only responsible choice is all of the above. The A19 amendment before us takes a holistic approach to public and student safety. Bills included in the package will invest tens of millions of dollars in safety upgrades for our schools, both public and private. Another will reban the binary triggers that shooters use to make standard guns twice as lethal. Another will enhance the statewide use of extreme risk protection orders to keep guns out of the hands of people who pose imminent risk to themselves or others. Another makes critical investments in mental health access for children. And this bill includes the ban on semi-automatic military-style weapons and high-capacity magazines. The type that was used at Annunciation and in shootings in Las Vegas, Sandy Hook, Parkland, Uvalde, the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, the Tree of Life Synagogue, and in more than 150 mass shootings in the last 10 years. My generation is the first in American history where shootings became so normalized that we run active shooter drills at schools. If we have the courage to act, the next generation of Minnesotans won't have to. I want to thank the many people who have helped with this legislation and who continue to do so. Most of all, I want to thank the Annunciation families, some of who are joining us this morning. It's through their strength, their commitment, their faith, their humanity, and their love for their children that got us here. I'm honored to represent them in the Senate, and especially with this legislation today. And with that, Mr. Chair, I believe Ken can walk through the policy provisions.
Sure. Mr. Bacchus, you gonna?
Chris will walk through
Oh, Mr.
the
Turner.
financial aspect.
Mr. Chairman, members, I'll quickly go through the spreadsheet. I'll be working off the spreadsheet in your package, the PDF timestamp of 3:37 p.m.
Mr. Turner, excuse me just a second before you begin. Senator Mohamed moves the A19 delete everything amendment to put it in front of us. Okay.
So moved.
Go ahead, Mr. Turner. I apologize.
Chair,
Senator Jahan.
is it the 5:37? For a
Mr.
timestamp?
Turner, the timestamp?
I've got a 3:36 timestamp.
On 4:27?
Oh, excuse me, it's a 5:37, yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure we're all
The three-
reading from the same page.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Draheim, the 3:37 was for the A18 amendment. I'm sorry. All right, we'll go with the A19 amendment, and we'll start with the Department of Corrections. Line 3 reflects the bed costs of the assault weapon and high cap magazine ban. In fiscal year 27, they estimated 7 correctional beds for a cost of $89,000, with tails in 28 and 29 of $243,000 and $297,000 respectively. Those represent an additional 14 beds each year, and then it'll be 14 flat in the out years. Move down to the Department of Public Safety, line 9. The BCA costs for the assault weapon ban, $450,000 in fiscal year 27 for a certificate of ownership contracting costs. The BCA will be absorbing approximately $600,000, and it is requesting, and the bill is appropriating tail costs of $146,000 each year in 28 and 29. Line 10 is the Extreme Risk Protection Order Public Awareness Campaign, a Senator Latz bill, $100,000 one time in 2027. Then we move on to the Violence Prevention Project Research Grant, $500,000 in 27 one time, Senator Pappas provision. Then we have Senate File 5000, Non-Public School Safety Grant Program, $1 million one time in 27, Senator Knusch bill. That's it for public safety. We move to the Department of Human Services, line 18, Senate File 4331. Actually, the next 4 are Senator Wicklund grants from Senate File 4531. Line 18 is school-linked behavioral health grants. One-time appropriation of $2,700,000. Then we have Family Peer Specialist Startup Grants, a one-time appropriation of $385,000. Next line is Mobile Crisis Grants, a one-time appropriation of $3,850,000. And then we have mental health grants for healthcare professionals, a one-time appropriation of $1,930,000. Then the next line is Senate File 4933, Medical Assistance Mental Health Reimbursement Rate Increases, another Senator Wicklund bill. The appropriation for 26 is $34,000. For 27, $5,810,000. And then, excuse me, we have tails of $14.5 million and $15.8 million in 28 and 29. And then finally, we have Department of Education appropriations, line 28, anonymous reporting system, $37 million one time in 27. And then on line 29, school safety aid, $19 million one time in fiscal year 27, a Senator Kunesh bill. And that, Mr. Chairman, is the spreadsheet.
Thank you, Mr. Turner, and I will note that the packets include the estimated, the runs for the schools on the school safety aid is in the packets. Mr. Bacchus, welcome to the committee.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So I'm going to do a pretty high-level overview of the policy provisions in Articles 2 to 5. There's a detailed section-by-section summary of the entire amendment in your packets if you care to get more information on that. So I'll start with Article 2. Article 2 addresses semi-automatic military-style assault weapons, i.e. SAMSAWs, and large-capacity magazines. This article defines those terms. It doesn't prohibit ownership of these items, but it does require persons who own them to certify the ownership with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, and it's a crime not to do that. It prohibits federally licensed dealers from selling those items. Private parties are allowed to sell them, and they would have to do that by essentially using the same process that they currently use for a private sale of a SAMSAW or a pistol, which includes a background check of some sort. With the exception that a dealer, a federally licensed dealer, may no longer facilitate that type of sale as they currently can do. It provides penalties for unlawful sales of those items, and then it provides exceptions to the certification requirements and the sale restriction provisions. Article 3 includes a series of other firearms-related changes to law. Section 1 encourages school districts and charter schools to implement local anonymous threat reporting systems, and it describes what such a system would entail. Section 2 amends the crime relating to possessing dangerous weapons in schools and school property. This section expands the definition of what is considered school property. It strikes exceptions to the crime and modifies other ones, and then it adds an exception for security services for armed security guards. Sections 3 and 4 expand the negligent storage of firearm crime to include access by persons prohibited by law from possessing firearms. Sections 5 to 7 and 22 address ghost guns. These provisions define what a ghost gun is and make it a felony to own, possess, receive, sell, transfer, or distribute one. They require persons who possess or acquire or assemble or manufacture a firearm that lacks a unique serial number to have a federal dealer imprint a serial number on it. It adds a similar but broader crime as in current law, prohibiting a person from obliterating, removing, changing, or altering the unique serial number of a firearm, or receiving or possessing such a firearm. And then it repeals the current law on this. The provisions make it a felony to sell, distribute, or transfer instructions that may be used to program a three-dimensional printer to manufacture a ghost gun, or to manufacture a firearm using a computer numerical control milling machine or a three-dimensional printer. The provisions also prohibit persons from manufacturing more than 3 firearms per year. And they provide for enforcement of these provisions in addition to the criminal provisions, but enforcement by the Attorney General. Sections 8 to 19 amend the Extreme Risk Protection Order Law, or the ERPO law. Now, there are a lot of changes here, but I'll try to hit the main ones. They expand who may petition for an ERPO. They allow for judges to consider emergency ERPOs regardless of the time of day the petition is filed. They allow a court to extend an ERPO for up to 5 years if the respondent has violated a previous one or who's been subject to multiple ones. They prohibit a person from requesting that an ERPO be vacated within 6 months from a previously denied request to vacate. They require law enforcement and federal dealers to establish policies for disposal of firearms transferred to them via an ERPO. They eliminate the requirement that law enforcement notify a respondent prior to disposing of abandoned weapons and eliminate a prohibition on them charging a processing fee for stored firearms. They allow subjects of an ERPO to transfer their firearms to a third party, and then they make other clarifications to the ERPO law, such as those related to mental health professionals' duty to warn, the service of ERPO petitions and orders, the sealing of ERPO petitions, the process for a respondent to comply with a search warrant, information that must be provided to respondents of an ERPO. They clarify that law enforcement officers pursuing an ERPO are not prevented from responding to exigent circumstances, and then some other changes. Section 20 provides additional reporting requirements for when a law enforcement officer either accidentally or negligently discharges a firearm. This provision is sunsetted in 5 years. Section 21 reenacts the binary trigger prohibition that was originally enacted in 2024. Article 4 requires the medical assistance program's reimbursement rates for certain assessments and testings that they equal 100% of Medicare rates, and they repeal a section of law requiring medical assistance program to reimburse certain mental health professionals at a lower rate than others. And then Article 5 are simply conforming changes related to Article 2. And Mr. Chair, that's the sort of high-level overview of the policy provisions.
Thank you, Mr. Bacchus. Are there questions from members of the committee on either the spreadsheet or on the walkthrough? If not, Mr. Nauman has, I believe, an amendment to financial go ahead.
So, Mr. Chair and members, I'm looking at the A19 amendment, page 5. And on line 5.4 through 5.14, there's an inconsistency about whether the anonymous reporting system is intended to be one-time or ongoing. So we've done a little reconnaissance, and we believe the intention is for this $37,000 with an ongoing program that appears later in the amendment to be an ongoing $37,000. So with your permission, I'll identify a couple of things that need to change. On line 5.4, the A needs to be removed. On line 5.6, strike this. On line 5.7 is a one-time appropriation. Those changes will make this an ongoing appropriation. And then because under budget rules, excuse me, the $37,000 is exactly the same, and that's what would be intended to be carried. There's no growth in it. There is no need for paragraph B, so that can be completely removed. And I think that clarifies it. Members would note that on the spreadsheet, if you flip back to that, line 28 would demonstrate $37,000 in fiscal years 28 and 29 each.
Senator Mohamed, you were intending that to be ongoing 37,000. Okay. I will suggest we take care of this amendment right now. Senator Mohamed moves the changes to page 5 as reported by Mr. Nauman. Ms. Stengel, you want to repeat the amendment for people before we address it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The amendment is on the A19 amendment on page 5, line 4. Delete the paragraph marker A. On page 5, line 6, delete this. On page 5, delete lines 7 through 14.
On that motion, is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion.
Nay.
Motion prevails. Further discussion of this, and Senator Mohamed, I wonder if you could tell us, we were handed a list of the bills that are incorporated in your A19. Do you have that list? Could you go through that quickly, and if you know where the bills are. Everyone's either in this committee or on the floor, you've told me, I think.
Yes, Mr. Chair. There's the assault weapons bill from me. That was Senate File 3655. Senator Latz, Senate File 3837, the Herbal Public Awareness Campaign.
Chair?
Senator Draheim.
Thank you. I think it'd be helpful to know where the bills are, so,
Yeah.
and if they've been amended, the language in the E19 has been amended from the original bill.
From the, Senator Draheim, I would suggest from the status wherever it is now on the floor and here in the
Yeah.
committee, okay.
Yep, thank you.
So, Senator Mohamed, if you could, if you know where, well, your bill is the one in front of us now, so, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chair, every single one of these bills have been heard in its committees and have all been laid over or sent to finance. And, the Senate File 3655, that one was also heard and sent to finance.
But, Senator Mohamed, are some of these bills on the floor now instead of in finance?
That would be a nonpartisan question. We will get that for
Okay,
you.
if you could get that, I think that would be helpful to members, so should we? I think that would be helpful if we could have that. You can take that in a few minutes if Mr. Bacchus or somebody can work on it. Senator Draheim, perhaps we can pursue that if Mr. Bacchus can dig out where the bills are right now. And Senator Mohamed, do you know if the bills that are either on the floor or in finance, if the amendment, the A19, is basically taking the language in them, or are there other things, and if so, if you could tell us what they might be?
Mine did get rewritten, Mr. Chair, so we did amend that one. It's not the original language. And then the Swadzinski school one was also amended. In terms of where each individual bill is, I believe Jackie Clinton will get us that information very quickly.
Okay, yes,
So those were the two that were amended prior
Okay.
to putting them in the package.
right. Okay, so, but if you're aware of, if you have a bill in front of us and you change the bill in front of us into here, that might be helpful to people. That's my understanding. While they're assembling that information, are there further discussion on the bill? Okay, I wanted to, I'll spend just a minute to say that I appreciate Senator Mohamed's work on this issue. I think none of us had hoped that the events of last year that spurred action on this, I think, are tragic, and I think we've got in our packets a number of letters from parents. One of the ones I saw was from a woman who writes that today's 8 months since the Annunciation shooting, and she talks about how much the world has moved on. It's no longer a headline. She says, what a luxury that must be. She can mark these 8 months in phases, the immediate panic phase followed by a phone call, during which I sped down the highway running through worst-case scenarios and pleading with God. Then immediate relief, where I found my 9-year-old son and 6-year-old daughter in the gym looking lost and confused, but beautifully whole. And then she said the next few months were the acute post-traumatic phase. Her children could not sleep alone, frequent nightmares. Her daughter's separation anxiety was so severe she refused to be alone in any room of the house. And I think that's something that victims of gun violence are living with every day. And so I appreciate your assembling this package. And if you want to speak generally about, because you have some provisions for funding, the biggest funding things are your school safety and the mental health. And I wonder if you or Senator Wickland want to speak to any of that.
Mr. Chair,
Senator,
before we get to that detail, if I could.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Mohamed made reference to the work that she did with Senator Latz shortly after the tragic shootings at Annunciation in the church, where 2 children were lost and 27 people were shot. I want to underscore how important that moment was. That the Senate didn't decide to just take to social media or do a press conference, but instead came together by bipartisan form, I think in this room, and spent 2 full days hearing proposals and having debate about the proposals to let Minnesotans understand and see that this body is serious about this issue and that we're serious about working with members of the Senate, Democrats and Republicans from all the regions of the state to try and find a path forward. That was a really critical foundation for the work that is being taken up today that Senator Mohamed has so ably shepherded through. For those who are here right now, you can see that work manifesting in a proposal, and we're going to spend today and part of tomorrow working our way through that. So we are able to bring something to the floor that has been vetted in this committee along with the other committees, and that's important as well. The last thing I want to say is over the weekend, I was invited to spend some time back in the place where I was born in a little town in Wisconsin. They had their annual meeting, and they'd asked me to come and talk about what we'd have experienced in Minnesota in the last year. A lot of people are interested in what we experienced in the last year. And I know Mike Moisky is in the audience, and so I just want to forgive me for this. I talked about Harper's mom, Jackie's testimony, and how it has stuck with me. The words that she said, the things that you have been through. When she said the sound of a parent's voice, the language after they've lost a child is not something that is human. In that room, I felt that. I have always believed deeply in what we're able to accomplish together. This is probably one of the hardest issues for us to find our way together on. But we're doing the work, and we're doing it in a way that should demonstrate to Minnesotans that we're serious about it, and that we're serious and committed to our kids and our schools and trying to keep them safe from the things that are hurting them. And I hope for us. So I want to thank Senator Mohamed, because I know the time and care that you've put into this proposal. And I know it is a hard one for the people on this committee for all sorts of reasons. And I'm grateful for the attention and for the genuine attitude that is embodied in this committee right now as we handle this difficult situation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. Senator Friends.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Mohamed, for just outstanding work and the discussion and the tone. And for the folks that are here, this is the Finance Committee, but there's a lot more going on than just money in this bill. Senator, what I really like is the collaboration. And I want to say all your provisions have been vetted repeatedly through the committee processes, which is where the voice of the people is heard, and you have listened. The letters in the packet show, in my opinion, that you're on the right path. And Senator, I want to encourage you as we go forward, as someone who comes from rural Minnesota, where we have a lot of what I would call responsible gun owners. First of all, gun owners over 60 did not grow up with assault weapons. They grew up hunting pheasants and ducks and want less people to get shot. The provisions in your bill will lead to less people getting shot. And for those who say change is hard in America, I agree with you. But there was a time in this country when it was legal to dump chemicals into Lake Erie. It's not legal anymore. For that matter, there was a time when it was okay for the government to draft an 18-year-old and send him or her to war before they could vote. For that matter, there was a time in this country when it wasn't legal for women to vote. Change is hard, but that does not mean it's wrong. We are going to save lives with your bill, Senator Mohamed, and we're going to listen, and we're going to put it to a conclusion on the Senate floor, and I will be a yes vote with you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Senator Wickland, did you want to comment at all on the mental health stuff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'll just make some comments in general. I also want to express my support to you, Senator Mohamed. I really appreciate your work on this. I think the situation we're in requires a comprehensive approach, and I really appreciate your bringing all these items together. There are many in the, excuse me, in the public safety and the criminal justice area that relate to guns that I'm very supportive of, and I'm pleased that we are finally able to take action on, and because they have been discussed over the years. So I really appreciate those being included in the bill, such as banning the binary triggers and the ghost guns, and addressing the assault weapons. So I appreciate all of that. In terms of the mental health provisions, I'm pleased to see those included. What we brought forward to the Judiciary Committee to consider, the 4 different grant programs are ones that allow us to expand access to mental health services in many meaningful ways. The school-linked behavioral health grants are extremely well utilized in the state and have been for many years. And we know that that there are kids who are not able to get access to mental health services because there's not enough grant funding. So I'm happy to see that included. Mobile crisis grants are a way to help us address crisis situations with a mental health response, and we know that is one way to help address situations in a more comprehensive way than just a law enforcement response. So I'm happy to see those included. And we know healthcare professionals are impacted by gun violence as they're doing their jobs, and so it's really important to find ways to take care of them. And the rate increases, these rate increases represent addressing 2 specific areas. One is psychological testing and assessment rates, and we chose that because it is a real it's causing delays for kids to get access to further help with mental health concerns and other concerns. If they can't get through the psychological testing process, if they can't get access to a professional that can help them with that, then they can't proceed to getting care for their conditions, and so this rate increase would address that. The other one is to remove what is called the 20% cutback for master's level providers. And this would make it so that master's level providers receive the same reimbursement rate as others. And we feel that is really important because master's level providers are key to our mental health professionals, the system we have in Minnesota, and we need to have more people want to go into this field. And the cut back, the 20% reduced rate, is inhibiting access to mental health care. So all of this, this collection of items is really important. I appreciate it being included in the bill, and it will definitely make a difference as we need to continue striving to improve our mental health system and also to address specific gun violence concerns. So thank you.
Thank you. Senator Mohamed, are you able to go through some of the, where the bills are, the status of the bills?
Yes.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Siri does not understand.
For the record, my Siri never talks, but today she found her voice. Mr. Chair, Senate File 3655 is in finance. It's the provision before us right now. It's being amended by the A19 amendment. Senate File 4531 is in finance. The amounts were adjusted, otherwise the policy is as it left committee. Senate File 4933 was heard in HHS, laid over, and is being amended on the A19 amendment before us. Senate File 5000 is sitting in finance, and it's being amended by the A19 amendments right now. Senate File 3983 is sitting in Ed Finance, and it was amended it's in the A19 amendment with guidance from Chair Mary Kunish. Senate File 3837 is sitting in finance. Amount is filled in, but nothing else changed within the policy. Senate File 1580 is also in finance. The amount is filled in, but no other changes were made. Senate File 3560 is on the floor, and it's being amended in the E19 before us right now. Senate File 4200 is also on the floor, is being amended on the A19 amendment. Senate File 3825 is also on the floor, amended in the A19 amendment before us. Senate File 3661 is sitting in finance. It's in the amendments A19 before us. Senate File 4703 is on the floor. It's also in the A19 that's before us right now. And finally, Senate File 3572 is in finance, and it's in the A19 amendment before us.
Thank you. And I was told by staff that 3661, Senate File 3661 is also on the floor. That's the ghost gun one. I believe that's also on the floor.
That might be correct. To my understanding, it's in finance, but we'll double check
Okay.
that for you.
Do we have more discussion on the bill or the proposals? Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, are we going to get an updated fiscal note for tomorrow?
With the, Senator Draheim, you mean with the 37,000 ongoing?
Yeah, and is there taxes calculated? I mean, if we're going to have a reduction in taxes, do we look at that? Is that a normal?
Mr. Turner, Mr. Nauman?
Mr. Chair and Senator Graham, it's a good question. The governor had some recommendations that showed some interactions with policies that the governor's budget recommended. And I'm currently in communication with the tax fiscal analyst now about that exact point. So I'd like to think about that for a few minutes and get back to you.
And Mr. Chair, the Senate File 3661 that you mentioned is on the floor. You were correct.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I appreciate Senator Mohamed going through it. I think she said 3837 was in finance, and as I've looked up the bill, it's still being laid over in judiciary. But, and I'm happy to be corrected. I've just got it up right now. But Mr. Chair, typically, you know, as Senator Mohamed said, there are these bills that have been passed out to finance or these bills that have been passed out to the floor, and they've been amended going into the A19. And I think our standard protocol is to have a fiscal note done on an amendment of this magnitude so that everything is consolidated. And I'm asking if we will have a comprehensive fiscal note that we as the Finance Committee, because that's our jurisdiction, will be able to see.
And Senator Pratt, I'll have Mr. Nauman comment on it, but I believe this fiscal note, other than the 37 ongoing, which on the current spreadsheet shows it as one time, and that was amended here. But as far as I know, the rest of the spreadsheet is tracking what's in the A19, not what was in the original bills, but was in the A19.
And Mr. Chair, I'm not talking about the spreadsheet. I'm talking about the fiscal note where we get the explanations of the impacts. Specifically, as Senator Mohamed said, that many of these provisions have been amended since they've been passed out of committee.
Mr.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll invite members to sort of wander through the appropriations article with me, and if I get something wrong, I know Mr. Turner will, will correct me on that, and I may want to just ask him if my understanding is correct. In many cases, as a general matter, and to ease members' understanding of what the fiscal implications of the bill were, we, as a staff, pulled together that unified spreadsheet that he walked through earlier. Obviously, we found an error, and we will fix that. And when the bill comes before you tomorrow, we'll provide an updated spreadsheet. I believe Section 2 had a completed fiscal note that demonstrated the corrections increase. So I think there were fiscal notes done in many cases on individual components rather than a single fiscal note on all pieces. Mr. Turner, I think in many cases these Section 3 had a number of grants and they probably were not required to do fiscal notes. It was just a decision about how much the grant for public awareness was to fund violence prevention project. $1 million for school safety grants. I don't think there were fiscal notes needed on those because they were just grants that were decisions made by the author. When it comes to Health and Human Services, Mr. Turner, do you recall if there was a fiscal note prepared on the school-linked behavioral health grants?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Nauman, no.
No, you don't recall, or we can check that, obviously.
Yeah, I can check it right now.
Okay.
I was given that number.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair and Senator Draheim, some of this results to cross jurisdictions. Mr. Turner prepared the spreadsheet, but there was a number of cooks in the kitchen to prepare the spreadsheet.
Chair.
Senator Draheim.
My main concern was the sales tax implication.
Yep.
And that's, I don't see that on the spreadsheet. So that's my main concern. So I just wanted to point that out to the committee.
So I don't want to surprise you with this, but we have already.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, you know, I appreciate Senator Draheim's comments, but I'm thinking process in that we have a lot of different bills that have been consolidated into one, some that seem to have had fiscal notes, some that haven't, some we've been told that the agencies are going to absorb the cost. The fiscal note provides us more information than just what's on the spreadsheet. It provides us with the assumptions. And as Senator Mohamed said, many of these bills have been amended going into the A19 that that we don't know if there's been a change in the fiscal impact, the fiscal note or not. I would like the LBO or somebody to, you know, we as a finance committee shouldn't have 12 different fiscal notes that we're trying to weed through as we're considering this. And I would like to have one comprehensive fiscal note that we as a committee can look at specifically tied to the A19. That's the protocol we've had in the past, and the protocol I think that we should keep in this bill as well, especially one of this magnitude.
Senator Pratt, I mean, for when we are appropriating, I mean, the types of fiscal notes we get are from Department of Corrections on what the expected bed impact is and so on. When we have grants for, if we're appropriating a grant for 19 million for school safety aid, fiscal note is 19 million. And so what most of this bill is, most of the costs in this bill are grants, which are determined by the legislation, not by a fiscal note. So I think it's appropriate to make sure we have all the fiscal notes, but I understood that they had them for everything except for the grants, which is not something, a fiscal note saying this bill is providing 19 million in grants is 19 million. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I don't disagree with you on that, but again, we've been told that these bills have been amended. We have a number of fiscal notes coming from various agencies and committees, but they're all being wrapped up into the A19. And what's in front of us is the A19, not the individual bills. This bill is significant enough that we should not be shortcutting the process. And we, as the Finance Committee, should have a comprehensive view, not piecemeal from committee to committee, not knowing what's been amended out or what's been amended in, to say that this is what we're passing out as a package. I find that I'm just trying to follow the process that we followed in almost every other case. There doesn't seem to be an extreme urgency on this from a timing standpoint, in that this amendment wasn't even available to the public until, well, it wasn't drafted until 4:40. I can't tell you when it was made available to the public. Certainly wasn't made available to legislators before that, and this hearing. We've done our best to kind of weed through it, but again, a spreadsheet is not a fiscal note. A spreadsheet doesn't have the detail and the explanations of where the various agencies go. We may have questions for the Department of Corrections. We may have questions for the Department of Education, and I think and how they've come up with their assumptions. And I think we should have the ability to take a look at that.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Mohamed.
Thank you, Senator Pratt. I think the earlier bill that you mentioned was Senate File 3825. Is that correct? 3837. Okay.
Let me check that. 3837.
We're double checking that for you to get you a concrete answer. And I'd just like to say these bills have all been heard in judiciary or in their respective committees as standalones. Every single one of them has had a fiscal note, and not much has changed with these bills. So their fiscal notes are going to be exactly what you have in front of you, which is the spreadsheet, Senator Pratt.
Senator Pratt, continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Mohamed. I get that. Not all of these. We've noted at least 3 of these bills have not passed out of their committee. They've been laid over, but they have not been passed. No action's been taken. But if the fiscal notes are the same, it should be relatively easy for the LBO to consolidate that into one comprehensive fiscal note tied to the A19 amendment, so that we have an overall comprehensive view of what we're being able to adopt.
Senator Pratt, Mr. Chair.
Senator Mohamed, go ahead.
Senator Pratt, that's a fair perspective. The only one that's been laid over is the Senate File 4933. The rest have either been sent over to the Finance Committee or to the floor. Yeah.
And Senator Pratt.
And that one is the medical assistance reimbursement rate, which we're increasing. That's the only one.
And Senator Pratt, the 3837 that you asked about is simply an appropriation of the amount that they chose, so there's not really a fiscal note for that. It's, you can read the bill and it says how much is being appropriated. Senator Wickland.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say that Senate File 4933, yes, that was laid over, but it was included in the HHS omnibus bill, so that has advanced through this committee and is on the floor. So that language is in there, and the fiscal note is available.
Further discussion right now. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate it, and it's hard to track when we've got these various proposals that have been carried in other bills, right? We only have what has been provided to the committee for us to look up. whether these are just simply appropriations, I mean, I'm not just talking about a fiscal note for 3837. What I'm saying, Mr. Chair, is that we now have a package in front of us, a package that some contains some direct appropriations that don't require a fiscal note, some that do require a fiscal note where new FTE are being hired or the agency is requiring additional expenses, or they may choose to absorb those expenses. It's important for us as a finance committee. We shouldn't, and as Senator Mohamed said, these have been amended, and we don't know the impact of that. If there's no change to the fiscal note on these amended provisions, that's fine. Let's just get them in one comprehensive package so that we as a finance committee can have a document that is tied to the A-19 like we've done in almost every other process going forward in the past. This is our standard protocol, that when we do an amendment of this size on a bill with this magnitude, that we have, that we know exactly what we're doing. And we shouldn't have to be going to 5 or 6 or 10 different bills to find out what those fiscal costs are. We should have those in front of us so that we can see how they all interact with each other.
Mr. Chair. Senator Pratt, thank you for saying that. I will say, I think it's unfair to hide behind process. Every single one of these bills has been heard in their respective committees.
Mr. Chair, I'm not trying to hide behind process. I'm just trying to make sure that we follow the process that we have. And I really do take offense at that insinuation, Senator Mohamed.
Mr. Chair, Senator Pratt, my intention is never to offend you. I have a bill before you, which has been before many of our committees. Some of these have financial implications. Every single one of these bills that have been heard in their respective committees did get a fiscal note. Minnesotans have asked us to put together a package on gun violence prevention, a comprehensive package. That is what is before you today. I have gone through where each bill is, what committees it's been through, whether it's in on the floor, in finance. I do hear your concerns. Yesterday, you made concerns about getting the A-19 amendment far too late. We pushed the date to take the vote for another day. So let's discuss the bill.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Mohamed, I'd like to discuss the bill. I'd like to discuss the bill as in terms of finance. And since we have an extra day, I see no reason why we can't get the comprehensive fiscal note by LBO done.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Mohamed.
And, you know, Senator Pratt, I appreciate it. This bill doesn't get to the floor for a while. We have 3 weeks left of the legislative session. We've had kids who died in our communities. Minnesotans are asking us to act and do something. Let's do our jobs.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Mohamed, I'm not trying to stall your bill at all. I'm just saying we should be following the process we've always followed. And if it's as easy as you say, then we should be able to have something put together by tomorrow.
If you want the fiscal for each of these bills, we'll have them emailed over to you, but they are all in their respective committees. There's a spreadsheet in front of you. You see the numbers in front of you, Senator Pratt.
Mr. Nauman, could you?
Mr. Chair, members, I'll try not to make this more muddy, but in many cases, when a directed grant is being decided upon by the author of a bill, fiscal staff has, operating in the name of the chair and of the committee to which the bill has been referred, has a decision to make. Should we add more fiscal notes to the process when there is a simple decision about how much money is going to be appropriated? In some respects, that's a decision for the committee and for the legislature as a whole. And so for members' edification, just looking at page 2.4, or line 2.4 rather, this is $100,000 for a public awareness campaign. In that particular case, fiscal staff we receive instruction, and there is no fiscal note required in that circumstance. The same would be the case, and I'm skipping over the first page, I'll come back to it. Paragraph B, similar circumstance. Paragraph C, similar circumstance. These are grants that have been essentially decided by the author. I think the same applies, and Senator Wicklund already dealt with, we had fiscal note on the school-linked behavioral health grants. I believe that's the case. Subdivision 2, none was required because this is also just a simple grant. Same with the mobile crisis grants, the mental health grants for healthcare professionals. That's just a grant as well. The mental health reimbursement rate, I believe Senator Wicklund spoke about that one that this committee has already addressed. There was a fiscal note prepared individually on subdivision 2 on line 5.3 in section 5. The $19 million was a decision that the legislature, that the author made for the purposes of the amendment. And in many cases, when it comes to K-12, we model those in-house. So that was a circumstance where a fiscal note wasn't required, and we make that decision in large measure not to burden the fiscal note process, to be a little bit more efficient. Members are well aware that sometimes getting fiscal notes through the process is a lengthy process. If I can skip back to the first page, there are individual fiscal notes on section 2 and subdivision 2 in section 3. So that's what I can tell you. Line 1.2, 1.28, line 4.29, and I believe line 5.3. Those subdivisions have fiscal notes behind them. And to make the matter clear for members with a simple accounting, that we put a spreadsheet together that reflected those. If it's important for tomorrow when the bill is being processed, we can bring those fiscal notes to the committee, have them available to support the process. As folks know, senators well know, if we were to go through a process of requesting a comprehensive fiscal note on everything, it would be a large, complicated fiscal note that would probably be a little bit more difficult to deal with because it's going to have a number of sections that are essentially repeats of everything that we have had. And so I asked fiscal staff to prepare a single spreadsheet to try to make it a little bit easier.
Senator Friends and Senator Draheim.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And Senator Mohamed, I just want to compliment you for the perspective. I'm with you, Senator Pratt. We want more information on finance, not less. But I'm with you, Senator Mohamed, that big story here is not fiscal. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members.
Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair. And, you know, we're in the Finance Committee, so this is what our primary responsibility is the numbers. And Senator Mohamed, we talk all the time. We're in all the committees together. I have a good relationship, and I appreciate you. You know, my surprise, you know, on this spreadsheet that, you know, to me, there's sales tax, extra sales tax on some items in your bill that go to habitat restoration, and that's something very important to me in my district. That's why I was wondering if there was anything on sales tax, just so everybody's clear where I was coming from. And then the other surprise that there's nothing in your bill for the Attorney General. And that's why I was wondering, because I think some of the underlying bills did have in their fiscal note some money for the Attorney General to follow or to fight lawsuits. And you know my opinion on most of this stuff. And we served together over the interim and had some good discussions on that too. Our districts are totally different. And, you know, just since this was posted last night till right now, I've literally had hundreds, if not 1,000 emails urging me to oppose this bill from my district. And we just come from different places politically in our districts. But I'm not here to talk about all that. We're here to do the finance work, and that's all I'm asking is that we have time. You said it yourself, we have 3 weeks. I would just like a clear picture. I'm a no on the bill. And I don't need to sit and debate every aspect of the bill. You know I'm a no on the bill. We talked yesterday. But I have a responsibility to my district, and I have a responsibility to the state on the fiscal part. And that's what I would just like a little more information on. And no offense to the staff, you know, I love our nonpartisan staff. They do a great job. And this time of year is very hectic. But I just don't think this is a complete picture of all the underlying bills. So thank you.
Mr. Turner, on the Attorney General things, are there things here where the Attorney General may have costs that, and if so, they would be in those fiscal notes, or are there no provisions where they would do any enforcement or whatever?
Mr. Chairman, the heart of the bill is Senate File 3655. The Attorney General has no costs for a 3655. The other provisions, if I had gotten, that I got fiscal notes on, the fiscal note was zero. Other than the cost of corrections and public safety, and actually most of public safety provisions are grants. And like Mr. Nauman said, grants are what you decide to grant to them. The other gun control or gun provisions that I made fiscal note requests on came back zero.
So, but in other words, there was no Attorney General costs for, particularly on the one that the underlying 3655, no Attorney General costs in that.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct, yep.
Okay.
And we have somebody from the Attorney General's office who can talk about that, Mr. Chair.
Please identify yourself and go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Assistant Attorney General Eric Maloney. To Senator Draheim's question or comments on the AG's office and the fiscal impact here, to my knowledge, I'm looking at the list of bills that were included in the omnibus here. The only bill here that had an Attorney General impact is 3661 on ghost guns. I drafted that fiscal note. It's a zero-cost fiscal note that the AG's office would fully absorb the enforcement costs of 3661.
Is there further discussion on fiscal note or anything else? Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm looking at the fiscal note for 3655, Mr. Turner, and that shows 573,000 current biennium, 870,000 in the tails. So that's not the Department of Corrections. It looks like it's the Public Safety Department. There's another, and so there seem to be a number of assumptions on this. I don't see the, I don't see the Attorney General in here, but and it looks like that change. It looks like possibly that's been amended through the A19 to a lower cost.
Mr. Turner.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The cost to the Department of Public Safety on 3655 is for the permit tracking system for the certificate of ownership. According to the fiscal note, the total cost is $952,000, of which the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension would absorb $503,000 and leaving $450,000 for contracting costs going to outside the agency, which is what's appropriated in the bill. When did that go into, what version was that? Mr. Chairman and members, the delete everything amendment has an effective date change, which may affect the appropriation to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Do you want to?
Mr. Bacchus.
Mr. Chair and members, yes, one of the changes in the delete everything amendment relating to the assault weapons is the effective dates now are going to be, I believe it's July 1, 27, as opposed to August 1, 26. So that was one of the suggestions made, and I don't know, Mr. Turner would have to speak as to whether that affects any of the appropriations, but the policy provisions have been pushed back a year.
And Mr. Chairman, members, I believe, but I'll check, that would make the fiscal year 27 appropriation of the Department of Public Safety.
Mr. Turner, a little bit louder, a little closer to the microphone.
Oh, that would push out the appropriation to the Department of Public Safety by a year. We wouldn't need a fiscal year 27 appropriation.
So it'd be the same numbers, but a year later.
Mr. Chairman, the Department of Public Safety, I guess, I won't speak for them, but I would imagine they still have to develop the system to go into place, the certificate of ownership system. Whether or not the current fiscal note reflects that, that new effective date, I would say probably does not.
Probably does not affect it, okay. If you could double check on that before tomorrow, it'd be helpful. Further discussion, Senator Pratt?
No, Mr. Chairman, I just want us to make sure that we're following the process that we've always followed.
Agreed. Is there further discussion on the A19 amendment that Senator Mohamed has moved? If not, Senator Mohamed moves the A19 amendment as amended by the oral amendment earlier, and that is before us at this time. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the A19 amendment say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion prevails. Is there further discussion, further amendments on the Senate File 3655 as amended by the A19 amendment? If not, the plan is to lay this bill over until tomorrow, and we will be taking up tomorrow Senate File 4067, which is going to be the vehicle for the gun violence prevention package. The language that was just adopted in the A19 would be offered as a delete everything amendment to that one, and that would pass alone as a standalone gun violence prevention package. And Senator Mohamed, I know you have a lot of parents and others who have, a lot of people have submitted letters on different parts of this bill and so on, and I wanted to quote, one of them was from a fifth grader at Annunciation who said he thinks our laws are supposed to keep people safe, and this law will help us keep kids like me safe. Hope you'll listen to my friends and me, keep us safe so no one has to go through what we went through. Your job is to help make laws better. You can do it. I believe you can make the right choice. And the day after the shooting, I was at there's a news conference in Minneapolis City Hall, and one woman standing in the back was holding a sign that I was saying, our kids need to hide behind their desks because politicians hide under theirs. And I thought that that's why you're bringing the bill forward. I think that's why we have to address the issue. So I appreciate your doing it. Do you have any final comments before we adjourn for the day?
I do, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to thank the families at Annunciation who have been central to this work and have talked to members on both sides of the aisle. They have ensured that this issue isn't political, but one that is about what happened in their community and keeping other kids safe. I also want to name that when Senator Latz and I created the work group back in early September, we invited all 67 senators so that they can bring proposals to make sure that we can prevent the next mass shooting in Minnesota. I do appreciate Senator Draham for being a part of that work. He talked a lot about mental health funding. He talked a lot about public awareness. Those are issues that I took to heart. They are included in this bill. I do understand there's a fundamental issue, disagreement on whether we should include an assault weapons ban into the bill or not. I think overwhelming Minnesotans are asking us to do so. They've also asked us to make sure that there is school safety aid for both public and private schools. They've asked us for mental health funding. We've included that. We've included the school safety aid. We've included a version of the assault weapons ban in high-capacity magazines. This isn't a political issue for me or the people in my community. For Mike and Jackie, who lost their daughter, Harper, it isn't political. It's personal. And they would do anything to get their child back, to make sure they don't sit behind us and watch us argue about process. I think it is far too late for their child, but we can save the next one. And we have an opportunity to do that. We have 3 weeks until session is over. We'll come back tomorrow together. I hope everybody is ready to pass this bill and get it to the floor as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mohamed. And with that, Senate File 3655 is laid over. And before we adjourn for today, members, we're going to start at 8:30 in the morning tomorrow in this room. We'll be taking up, first we'll take up the Senate File 4067, the vehicle that this language will be amended into. And then we've got several other bills tomorrow too, including the Human Services Omnibus Bill, continuation of the Transportation Bill, and the Attorney General's Office Medicaid Fraud Unit Bill. And with that, this committee is adjourned.